One thing is certain, browsers have personalities too. Some inspire incredibly loyal fan bases, while others seem to collect nothing but hate. Here's a ranking of the internet's most loved and most hated browsers, starting with a browser that may look a little ridiculous at first glance, yet has built one of the most passionate communities online, Opera GX. Released in 2019 as the world's first browser designed specifically for gamers, it never tries to be serious, and that's exactly why people love it. Its visual style is intentionally over the top. Neon themes, keyboard sound effects, cyberpunk animations. Everything about it feels like it was designed by someone listening to Skrillex on full volume while coding. But behind the flashy aesthetics is a community of over 30 million active users who genuinely rely on its features every day. Its biggest selling point is GX Control, a built-in panel that lets users manually limit how much RAM, CPU, and network bandwidth the browser can use, preventing it from slowing down games running in the background. On top of that, it offers native Twitch and Discord integration right from the sidebar, a gaming news and deals hub called GX Corner, and a mod platform with more than 3,000 customization packs, including official collaborations with Riot Games and Ubisoft. No other mainstream browser comes close to offering this level of visual customization. Of course, it's not perfect. Some users complain that its resource limiters can be so aggressive, they end up freezing entire web pages. Another controversial feature is a joke that generates a fake browsing history after 2 weeks of inactivity, nicknamed the Soul Redemption feature. Some people think it's hilarious, while others find it immature. Even so, people have jokingly compared Opera GX to Taylor Swift. Versatile, backed by an incredibly loyal fan base, and always ready to release an entire album of passive-aggressive messages if you dare uninstall it. Among gamers and content creators, Opera GX has firmly established itself as one of the internet's most beloved browsers. But while Opera GX is loved for its personality, Internet Explorer is hated for the exact opposite, or rather, for becoming the definition of everything a browser shouldn't be. Released in 1995 alongside Windows 95, Internet Explorer dominated more than 95% of the browser market in the early 2000s. But that same monopoly made it complacent, slow to evolve and plagued by security flaws that Microsoft often took months, sometimes even years, to fix. By the time Internet Explorer 6 came around, the browser had become the internet's favorite punchline. Entire websites were created just to list reasons why people hated it. Stop IE, I hate IE, and even Facebook pages with tens of thousands of followers dedicated solely to mocking a web browser. The most common joke of the decade was that Internet Explorer's only real purpose was downloading Firefox. In 2012, Microsoft even tried to embrace the criticism with an ad campaign called "The Browser You Love to Hate," openly acknowledging its terrible reputation in an attempt at self-deprecating humor. If anything, it only proved how bad things had become. When Microsoft finally retired Internet Explorer in 2022 after 27 years, the internet celebrated with an endless wave of memes and farewell jokes, many comparing its shutdown to a funeral people had been waiting decades to attend. Ironically, the memes never really stopped. Even today, parody accounts pretending to be Internet Explorer still call themselves the fastest browser, just to mock its legendary slowness. Very few tech brands have carried such a lasting stigma. Internet Explorer isn't just a poorly rated browser, it has become the universal benchmark for what it means to be hated on the internet. But if there's one browser that's truly a hidden gem, loved by those who discover it, yet overlooked by most, it's Vivaldi. Released in 2016 by John von Tetzchner, the co-founder of Opera, Vivaldi was born after he left the company over disagreements with the growing trend of oversimplifying web browsers. His answer was to build the complete opposite, a browser that refuses to choose between simplicity and power, offering both to anyone willing to customize it. Vivaldi is basically a Swiss Army knife disguised as a browser. It comes with a built-in email client, calendar, notes app, RSS reader, native ad blocker, and an incredibly advanced tab management system that lets you stack, group, and even organize tabs into separate workspaces. Ironically, that's also its biggest weakness. Even its most dedicated fans admit the learning curve is steep. With countless customizable toolbars, panels, shortcuts, and settings, Vivaldi can feel overwhelming to anyone who just wants to open a browser and start browsing, but for those willing to invest the time, the payoff is undeniable. User comments praising the experience and the feeling of finally having complete control over their browser appear far more often than you'd expect for such a niche product. Vivaldi isn't trying to be everyone's browser, it's trying to be the perfect browser for people who truly appreciate that level of control. And that's exactly why the people who use it love it so much. While Vivaldi has earned its fans through transparency, Yandex browser is criticized for the exact opposite. Developed by Yandex, Russia's largest technology company, this Chromium-based browser has become known for collecting a remarkable amount of user data, including search history, phone numbers, email addresses, and even users' ages. Because that data is tied to a company based in a country where the relationship between major tech companies and the government has long raised concerns among privacy experts, the browser has developed a controversial reputation. Unlike cases such as Brave, where the controversy centered around a specific decision that was later reversed, Yandex browser's business model is fundamentally built around data collection. It's not a mistake or a one-time incident. It's a core part of how the browser operates. As a result, privacy guides around the world frequently recommend avoiding Yandex browser altogether, often placing it alongside other browsers associated with extensive data collection, such as China's Baidu browser. There was never a major comeback or a redemption story here. It's simply a browser designed to gather as much user data as possible. And for anyone who values their online privacy, that's more than enough to place it among the internet's most disliked browsers. Now we come to a case unlike any of the others. A browser that was deeply loved, but is, for all practical purposes, already dead. That browser is Arc, created by the browser company. Launched with the promise of completely reinventing the browsing experience, Arc replaced traditional horizontal tabs with a vertical sidebar, introduced spaces to organize different workflows, and built a passionate community of users who described it as more than just a browser. It felt like an extension of their productivity. For many people, it was the first browser that truly felt designed for users instead of advertisers. But no matter how beautiful the design was, it couldn't solve the one problem that mattered most: money. Unlike Safari, Firefox, or Edge, which generate revenue through search engine partnerships, Arc never found a sustainable business model. It even let users choose their own default search engine, a fantastic decision for the user experience, but a terrible one for the company's bottom line. In May 2025, the browser company announced that it was ending active development of Arc to focus entirely on a new AI product called Dia. Then, in October of that same year, the company was acquired by Atlassian for $610 million, and the entire team behind Arc moved on to build something new. The community responded with grief rather than anger. On the browser's dedicated subreddit, users created a massive migration thread to help one another move their workflows elsewhere. Even today, in 2026, Arc still works and continues to receive Chromium security updates, but it will never get another major feature. It didn't die because it was a bad browser. It died because being loved doesn't pay the bills. And for many people, that's the quietest tragedy in the recent history of web browsers. From the mourning over Arc, we move on to a browser that carries a heavy reputation, but one that deserves to be examined with more nuance than the usual cliches allow. Microsoft Edge. Rebuilt on the Chromium engine in 2020, Edge is, technically speaking, a capable, fast browser with strong integration into Windows. Several 2026 comparisons even suggest it's a more logical choice than Chrome itself for users already inside the Microsoft ecosystem, offering solid performance and strong compatibility. The real issue, and here the reputation isn't entirely exaggerated, is behavior. Pre-installed on every Windows computer, Edge often feels like it refuses to take no for an answer. Users repeatedly report pop-ups asking why they are switching browsers the moment they try to download Chrome or Firefox, persistent notifications suggesting they pin Edge to the taskbar, and full-screen prompts pushing features they never asked for. In Microsoft's own support forums, it's common to find system administrators saying they have to manually strip Edge from corporate images just to prevent it from bombarding employees with this kind of internal advertising, behavior many describe as forced marketing spam built directly into the operating system. On top of that, there is also a technical history that fuels criticism. A security analysis from researchers at Trinity College pointed to Edge, alongside Yandex, as one of the browsers that exposes the most data, such as hardware identifiers, IP addresses, and location information, to its own servers, reinforcing concerns among users already skeptical of its behavior. In other words, unlike browsers such as Brave or Chrome, the criticism here doesn't come only from a small technically sensitive group focused on niche policy details. It is broader, driven both by intrusive day-to-day behavior and real privacy concerns. Market data even shows that a large share of Chrome downloads worldwide actually begins inside Edge itself, which has become a recurring joke. Edge exists, in practice, as a gateway to its own competitor. It is a technically solid browser, but one that manages to combine the two most effective ingredients for being disliked: being annoying to use, and at the same time giving people genuine reasons not to trust it. Where Edge tends to frustrate users, Firefox is still widely loved, even after nearly losing that trust. Created by the nonprofit Mozilla Foundation, Firefox carries the historical legacy of being the browser that helped bring down Internet Explorer in the early 2000s. It is also the last major browser that still runs on its own independent engine, Gecko, instead of Chromium, which now dominates almost the entire market. For many users, that alone makes Firefox the last real symbol of independence on the modern web. But in February 2025, that trust came dangerously close to collapsing. Mozilla introduced official terms of use for Firefox for the first time, and one passage granted the company a worldwide non-exclusive license to use any information entered into the browser. Poor wording made it sound like Mozilla was claiming the right to use anything users typed: passwords, private messages, and everything in between. The backlash was immediate. Longtime users of nearly 2 decades publicly announced they were uninstalling the browser, accusing Mozilla of betraying the very principles it had always stood for. Mozilla quickly rewrote the terms within days, clarifying that the license was only meant to enable basic functionality, such as syncing bookmarks across devices, and reaffirming that it has never directly sold user data. The crisis passed, but it left a mark. Even so, Firefox remains the browser of choice for users who care deeply about advanced extensions, full-featured tracker blocking like uBlock Origin, and deep customization, especially as Chrome has tightened its extension system following the controversial move to manifest Fi3. Despite its recent misstep, Firefox is still treated by its community as something rare, a piece of technology that still feels like it belongs, at least in part, to the user, rather than just to shareholders. From the almost unconditional forgiveness given to Firefox, we move on to a browser that has divided opinions from the moment it was born. Brave. Founded in 2016 by Brendan Eich, the creator of JavaScript, Brave positioned itself as the ultimate privacy-focused alternative, offering built-in ad blocking, anti-fingerprinting protections, and a cryptocurrency reward system that promised to let users earn money by viewing ethical ads. But in June 2020, a controversy emerged that still affects its reputation today. Users discovered that the browser was automatically inserting affiliate codes into URLs typed for cryptocurrency exchanges like Binance and Coinbase, without any warning or consent. In other words, the browser that promised never to interfere with your browsing was, in practice, modifying user-entered links to generate commission revenue. Ike publicly called it a mistake and rolled it back within days, but the damage to trust within part of the community stuck around. Since then, Brave has lived in a kind of permanent paradox. Independent tests consistently rank it among the best browsers for tracker blocking, and the company has never been caught directly selling personal user data. To be fully fair, in 2026, Brave is more popular and better regarded than ever. Recent privacy benchmarks place it among the top performers on the market, and much of the technical community now recommends it without hesitation. If this ranking were based purely on current sentiment, Brave would likely sit on the loved side. And those who defend it wouldn't be wrong. They might even be more correct than I am. The reason it remains here on the hated side is simple. The 2020 controversy never really stopped echoing. Every time Brave comes up in a discussion, someone brings it back up as if it were a permanent stain that even years of improved reputation can't fully erase. There is even a strange tendency in tech communities to give Mozilla the benefit of the doubt, while refusing to extend the same courtesy to Brave, even when their missteps are, in practice, quite similar. For a significant and vocal portion of users, Brave never stopped being the browser that promised to be different, but at the first opportunity stumbled into the very same habits it claimed to fight, even if today, in all fairness, it may have already earned its forgiveness. From the Brave controversy, we move on to a browser that is loved precisely because it never tries to be spectacular: Safari. As the default browser on every Mac, iPhone, and iPad, Safari doesn't compete through flashy features or extreme customization. Its goal is different. It focuses on delivering a cohesive, stable, and highly optimized experience, taking full advantage of the fact that Apple controls both the hardware and the software. That tight integration is exactly what makes it so well-liked within Apple's ecosystem. Syncing across Apple devices works seamlessly. Battery consumption on laptops has historically been better than any Chromium-based browser running on the same hardware, and the overall user experience feels nearly identical across Mac and iPhone and iPad. That level of consistency is something competitors simply can't replicate, largely because they don't control the entire ecosystem from end to end. The price of that stability is almost boring predictability. Reviews from 2026 often describe Safari as the perfect browser for people who hate change: reliable, efficient, and consistent, but likely to feel unexciting to anyone looking for innovation or advanced productivity features. It doesn't set trends. It simply delivers a solid foundation, year after year. And ironically, it is exactly this refusal to constantly reinvent itself that has earned Safari a different kind of loyalty. Not the loud, passionate fandom that Opera GX inspires, but the quiet trust of users who just want things to work without drama. And within the Apple ecosystem, that's exactly what Safari continues to do. Finishing our journey through web browsers, we arrive at a curious case. The most widely used browser on the planet is also one of the most criticized. That browser is Google Chrome. Unlike the other names on this list, the criticism around Chrome doesn't come from bugs or lack of features. It is technically fast, highly compatible with virtually every website, and consistently updated for security. The issue is structural. Chrome belongs to a company whose entire business model depends on targeted advertising, and that reality shapes every major decision the browser makes. The most recent and concrete wave of criticism came with the shift to the so-called Manifest v3, a new extension standard introduced by Google under the justification of security. In practice, however, it significantly reduced the effectiveness of ad blockers like uBlock Origin, forcing a light version that is widely considered weaker. Privacy researchers point out that this change conveniently benefits Google's own advertising business, the same ads ecosystem that is most heavily impacted by the original version of those blockers. But this criticism is not evenly distributed. It comes from a very specific group: developers, security experts, privacy-focused users, and power users who directly feel the impact of decisions like Manifest v3. For the average user, the person who just wants to open a browser and have everything work, the experience is very different. For them, Chrome remains the clear default: fast, seamless with Google account synchronization, and capable of running virtually any website without friction. In other words, Chrome isn't broadly hated. It is loved by the silent majority and criticized by a technically informed minority, which happens to be the same group that speaks the loudest about browsers on the internet. That contrast perfectly closes this list. a browser that almost nobody passionately defends in forums, yet almost everyone quietly continues to use in their daily lives.